The film starts in a hotel, where a man named Yui Kong Tenga beats up two thugs who want to kill him. Even with his bare hands, Yui Kong can easily subdue them. Not long after, a group of people who had just arrived there were very surprised to see him. Then Yui Kong receives a text message from his wife asking how a teenage girl who is being looked after by Yui Kong is doing. The scene then shifts to a few days earlier when Yui Kong was relaxing on the sofa reading and sipping his coffee. Then his wife named Hyun-soo approached him. Hyun-soo said that he was going on holiday to Jeju Island with his best friend, as well as to discuss the restaurant business they wanted to build there. But because it takes 14 days there, Hyun-soo's best friend, named Soo-ah, will leave her 17-year-old stepdaughter to Yui Kong while they are away. Yui Kong, of course, immediately refuses, saying that he's not a babysitter, especially since Hyun-soo says that the child will be staying at their house. They argue for a while, but eventually Yui Kong relents and agrees to his wife's request.
약속해줄게.
The next day, Yui Kong takes his wife and Soo-ah to the airport. He also promises to look after Yoon-ji, Soo-ah's stepdaughter. At night, Yui Kong picks up Yoon-ji where she brought her friend. Yoon-ji then tells Yui Kong that she wants to stay at her friend's house for a few days and wants Yui Kong to keep it a secret from her mother. Without hesitation, Yui Kong agrees to her wish because he thinks there will be some relaxing time he gets without having to take care of a baby. Then Yui Kong asks for Yoon-ji's bag and puts some money in it before returning it and driving her to her friend's house.
뭐라도 사가는 게 예의야. 그래 오래 있을 수 있으니까.
고맙습니다.
After this, she went home to sleep. But not long after, she wakes up to a call that seems to be coming from Yoon-ji, who sounds in pain, and asks her to come over immediately. Knowing this, he then rushes to the location Yoon-ji sent him only to see that Yoon-ji turns out to be fine, sitting in a cafe while chatting with a man. Seeing Yui Kong's arrival, he immediately introduces the man to Yui Kong, where he says that Yui Kong is his uncle. He also says that the man is his senior in high school to Yui Kong. Yui Kong is annoyed with the man, but he ignores him. He immediately asked why Yoon-ji was still out when it was already late at night. Yui Kong then tries to cancel Yoon-ji's plan to stay at her friend's house and invites her to go home immediately. But Yoon-ji ignores him, so it makes Yui Kong even more upset and immediately leaves him to return home. But then, she sees Yoon-ji riding a motorbike ridden by a man she says is her senior. He doesn't want to care about her anymore. Suddenly, Hyun-soo sends a text message asking how Yoon-ji is doing. Because of this, Yui Kong turns the car around and stalks her with the tracking device he previously put in her purse while she was putting money in her pocket. Yoon-ji is taken by the man to a closed ice skating rink and then takes her in front of Sung-yeon, a girl involved in criminal matters, where she uses handsome boys to seduce some young girls to get them a date. After that, Sung-yeon would kidnap and force the young girls into prostitution and profit from them. Yoon-ji and her friend seem to have been targeted by Sung-yeon and could easily fall into his trap of using handsome boys to seduce them. Yoon-ji's friend was seen crying and begging Sung-yeon to let them go, but he doesn't care at all and slaps the girl instead. Meanwhile, Yoon-ji tries to fight him off, but her efforts are futile. Shortly after, Yui Kong, who finally gets there, asks Sung-yeon to release Yoon-ji and his friend and threatens to beat Sung-yeon and his men. However, she ignored his warning and ordered her men to attack him. With his fighting skills, the unruly youths who are Sung-yeon's men are no match for Yui Kong, who can easily defeat them all. Even when he stabbed her in the stomach, she still stood her ground and retaliated by knocking him unconscious. He then takes Yoon-ji home and asks her to rest. The next day, Yoon-ji, looking at Ui Kong curiously, asks about his job since he lives in a mansion, and it's luxurious. He simply says that he has a fairly successful property business and asks her not to ask personal questions. In the evening, Ui Kong invites Yoon-ji to dinner at a restaurant. On the way home from there, they pass the location of the skating rink, where he beat up Sung-yeon and his men. Surprisingly, the rink has been fenced off with police lines, and many police officers pass by, suggesting that something has happened there. Several policemen stop vehicles passing the scene, including a policeman named Lee Young-ho who stops Ui Kong's car. Young-ho informed Ui Gang that there had been a murder at the ice skating rink and asked him some questions. He seems relaxed, answering every question the police ask. However, Yoon-ji is acting strangely, as if she's hiding something, and is afraid the police will find out. When he finally gets home, Ui Kong rushes to find out about the murder at the ice skating rink and is shocked to learn that the victims were the naughty kids he had beaten up the day before. On the other hand, Yoon-ji, who is in her room, looks very upset and sends a text message to someone, and was very surprised to learn that the victims were the naughty kids that Ui Kong had beaten up the day before. The next day, Young-ho went to Ui Kong's house and asked about his alibi at the time of the murder because through CCTV footage around the crime scene, his car was seen passing by the road 30 minutes before the murder. Not only that, Young-ho also manages to find CCTV camera footage that shows Yoon-ji driving with one of the murder victims, where the man, as well as the other victims, turns out to be her schoolmates. However, Ui Kong refuses to explain in detail, so Young-ho becomes suspicious of him and questions his relationship with a teenage girl like Yoon-ji. He tells the police that he was only asked to help look after her while his mother and wife were on a business trip to Jeju Island. She then asks Young-ho for clearer evidence of his and Yoon-ji's involvement in the murder case first, and if he has it, he can officially interrogate them. After Young-ho leaves, Ui Kong then goes to Yoon-ji and asks her to tell him the truth if she knows anything about her schoolmate's murder. Upon learning of her current situation, Ui Kong remembers the past when he met a girl who wanted to end her life. He wants to know what she wants, and then he asks for a hug from her, which she does, and after that, she loses consciousness. Ui Kong is distracted from his past memories when he hears Yoon-ji's mobile phone ring, which turns out to be an incoming call from Sung-yeon. Knowing that Sung-yeon is on the phone, he grabs Yoon-ji's mobile phone to talk to her. Sung-yeon wants to tell Ui Gang that she has a knife with his fingerprints on it, which could be a problem for him if handed over to the police. Since she threatened to hand the knife over to the police, Ui Kong is forced to agree to her request to meet her within an hour. He then asks Yoon-ji to stay home while he goes to meet Sung-yeon. Yoon-ji is scared that she'll be home alone, then is forced to go along. But Ui Kong says he'll make it difficult for her and gives her a bracelet with a tracking device just in case something bad happens. After that, Ui Kong rushes to prepare his weapons to face the worst. On the other hand, Sung-yeon feels happy after successfully threatening him. However, Sung-yeon does not know that Ui Gang is a former professional killer who is highly feared in the criminal world, not only in South Korea, but also around the world. Knowing that she keeps Yoon-ji's wallet with a tracking device, he rushes to her whereabouts. Ui Gang finally arrives at an apartment, where he meets a man named Jang, Sung-yeon's cousin, and the one who runs an illegal business involving underage girls. He then summons one of his big, tall men to confront Ui Gang. However, he has made a big mistake by underestimating Ui Gang, who does not hesitate to beat and torture his men. On the other hand, Sung-yeon, who heard the commotion, then rushed out and was very surprised to see Ui Kong there. He asks Sung-yeon to hand over the knife with his fingerprints on it, but he and Jang make matters worse by pointing the weapon at Ui Gang. Jang finally hands him the knife and rushes off with Sung-yeon.
그럼 이 아저씨가 잘못한 거네.
Taking the knife, Ui Gang immediately chases after them, but loses track when entering a dimly lit room. In that place, Ui Kong faces a man whose fighting skills are almost equal to his. He gets into a fierce fight with the man until the man finally chooses to run away after Yui Kong manages to injure him badly. After the fight, Yui Kong rushes home and discovers that his house has been broken into by a group of people who came to kidnap Yoonji. He immediately tracks her whereabouts with a tracking device until finally arriving at an apartment building that is used as a location to conduct illegal business involving underage girls. Yui Kong hears a girl screaming from one of the rooms, and it turns out to be Yoonji's friend, who was almost beaten up by a boy. He then saves her and asks where Yoonji is. On the other hand, Sung Yun, who turns out to be there too, realizes Yui Kong's arrival and rushes to leave. However, he manages to stop her and forces her to tell him where Yoonji is. Since Sung Yun refuses to say anything about Yoonji, Yui Gang is forced to tie him up and torture him to get information about Yoonji and his criminal gang. Sung Yun revealed that they deliberately involved underage girls in launching the illegal business run by Jang, where they then employed young girls to seduce adult men, then blackmailed the men for giving them pleasure. To smoothen their business, Jang and his gang have teamed up with some corrupt cops and share the profits with them. Sung Yun reveals to Yui Gang that Eugene and several other young girls will be sent to Russia to become prostitutes and tells him the address of the hotel where Jang is holding them before taking them to Russia. A short time later, Young Ho arrives there after a report from a resident who heard a commotion at the place. When he enters the apartment, he's surprised to see Sung Yun already badly injured and no Yui Gang in sight. Meanwhile, Yui Gang finally arrives at the hotel and gets into a fight with the bad boys scene at the beginning of the film. Even alone, he can easily kill a group of people with sharp weapons and has precise marksmanship, so it doesn't take long for Yui Gang to kill the thugs who stand in his way. Yui Gang then asks about Yoonji from the 3 surviving brats and doesn't hesitate to kill them when they can't share the information he wants. Soon after, a blonde-haired man appears and introduces himself as Yuri. Yuri, of Russian descent, turns out to be the man who once fought against Yui Gang at Jang's place. Yuri reveals himself to be a professional assassin working for the Russian mafia and tells Yui Gang that Yoonji will be taken to Russia on a ship leaving at 8 tomorrow morning. Knowing that he doesn't have much time since it's morning, Yui Kong has other plans to deal with him. Yui Gang rushes back to the hotel and once again engages in a fierce battle with Yuri. However, during the fight, he traps Yuri, then recklessly jumps from an upstairs window and falls right on top of Young Ho's car, which manages to track his tracks on the spot. Young Ho immediately points a gun at Yui Gang and accuses him of killing Sung Yun and the man at the ice skating rink a while back. Yui Kong faces the accusations calmly as usual until he finally takes Young Ho's gun and turns to threaten him. Since it's morning, he's forced to handcuff Young Ho and Yuri to the car as he drives at high speed to rescue Yoonji. To cut a long story short, Yui Kong arrives at the harbor just before Yoon-ji is taken to the ship that's leaving for Russia. He quickly kills the gangsters who kidnapped her and rescues her. But then, Jang arrives there and intends to kill him by running him over. Yui Gang manages to dodge, then urges Jang to reveal the mastermind behind all this. Reluctant to reveal any information about the plot, Yui Kong kills him on the spot. Seeing that Yui Kong doesn't hesitate to kill others, Young Ho finally realizes that Yui Kong is no ordinary man. Yui Gang then takes Jang's mobile phone and finds out that Young Ho is actually a corrupt cop who has been working with Jang and his gang to launch their illegal business. After finding evidence of Young Ho's involvement with Jang and his gang, Yui Kong threatens him and demands that Young Ho do all his bidding if he doesn't want the evidence handed over to other cops. Since Young Ho doesn't want his career as a police officer to end like that, he ends up giving in to Yui Kong's wishes for her to be acquitted of all charges. Afterwards, Yoon-ji is rushed to the hospital for intensive care, and Yui Kong accompanies her while she's there. He then asks her to tell the police what really happened. She then blames herself for all the bad things that happened to her and her friend. Yui Kong calms her down, assures Yoon-ji that everything that happened wasn't her fault, and asks her to rest and focus on her recovery. Not long after, Young Ho meets Yui Gang at the hospital. He says he already knew about Young Ho colluding with Jang when he accidentally saw Sung Yun's body in his car. Yui Kong deduces that it was Young Ho who killed Sung Yun to frame him. Yui Gang then asks Young Ho to find out about the Russian mafia syndicate that wants Yoon-ji and other young girls. At first, Young Ho refuses his request because it's too risky. But Young Ho has no choice but to comply as Yui Kong has evidence to destroy his career as a cop. A few days later, Yui Kong meets Hyunju, an arms dealer who was once his partner but decided to retire early due to an injury to his leg. Yui Gang asks for her help to find a sniper rifle and a silencer gun. Hearing this, he looks surprised as he thought that Yui Kong had retired completely. Yui Gang says he has a small problem to solve and needs the weapons ASAP. That night, Yui Kong gets a call from Young Ho who tells him about Park, a member of a criminal syndicate in charge of sending young girls to Russia, including Yoon-ji. Park, on the other hand, is furious when he learns that his men have been killed and the police are aware of his illegal activities. Therefore, he packed up his things and rushed out of his place. But it turns out that Yui Kong got there first and immediately killed all of Park's men guarding the place without the slightest difficulty, even killing them all while drinking coffee. Yui Gang finally managed to corner Park and force him to reveal information about his criminal syndicate. Park is initially reluctant to tell him anything, but Yui Kong brandishes his gun. Finally, Park reveals that he and his gang, which turns out to be a woman nicknamed Pig Mama, give young girls to mature men who are willing to pay a fortune to satisfy their desires. However, their customers are not random people, but high-ranking government officials and wealthy businessmen. Soon, Park and his gang were asked to provide at least 5 young girls to serve a grand judge named Kim. Park and Pig Mama usually target unstable high school girls and lure them with some money before eventually trapping them into a circle of illegal things. She also worked with a Russian crime syndicate and made exchanges with them, where they also sent young girls from Russia to become prostitutes in South Korea. After killing Park, Yui Kong called someone and asked him to come there immediately. Not long after, a group of people led by a man named Tae-hyun finally arrived and cleaned up the crime scene and removed the bodies of Park and all his men. Tae-hyun looks surprised when he gets a call from Yui Kong because he should have retired from his job as a professional killer. He tells Tae-hyun that he will need Tae-hyun and his team's services soon. He needs a large group to help him, and there will be a murder to be committed outside the city. At first, Taehyun refuses Ui Kong's request, but after he offers to pay Taehyun 3 times as much, he finally agrees.
네 배?
야, 그거 빨리빨리 좀.
The next day, Ui Kong finally gets the weapon he wants and immediately tests it at Hyunju's place. Afterwards, he meets Yoon-ji at the hospital, who is devastated when she learns that her friend, also a victim, chose to end her life. While at the hospital, Ui Kong calls Young-ho and asks about Yoon-ji's past, who was adopted by Soo-ah after her biological mother died when she was 5 years old. Young-ho also tells Ui Gang about Kim, who turns out to be from quite a famous family and has such a strong political influence that it's impossible for Ui Kong to imprison him. However, Ui Gang doesn't care because he won't send Kim to prison. Instead, he'll send Kim straight to hell. Young-ho also tells Ui Gang that Kim will throw a party at a mansion in a special area owned by his family, so that his depraved act won't be discovered by anyone. To cut a long story short, while Kim is busy partying with sexy women, Ui Kong jumps into action, killing all his men guarding the place with the sniper rifle he bought from Hyunju. On the other hand, Yuri, who works for Kim, knew right away that someone had broken in there because he couldn't contact his subordinates guarding outside the mansion. Ui Gang, who managed to infiltrate the mansion, then got into a shootout with Yuri's men, who attacked him simultaneously. At the same time, Young-ho, who is also there, points a gun at Ui Gang and threatens to kill him because Young-ho has now sided with Kim and Yuri. As it turns out, Ui Kong can easily defeat them, but he allows himself to be captured to be brought in front of Kim. Afterwards, he's taken to a room where Kim is seen with a teenage girl who looks very depressed and wants to run away. Not long after, Young-ho tells Ui Gang that he's not afraid of Ui Kong handing over evidence of her involvement with Jang and his gang because Kim has promised to help her by utilizing her connections with the police and prosecutors. Ui Gang isn't surprised by Young-ho's words, having anticipated this, and is as calm as ever. After Young-ho and all his men took her away from there, Kim immediately dragged the girl to his room, where he would satisfy his desire for the teenage girl. At the same time, Ui Kong finally fights back, taking down Young-ho and Kim's men with great ease. Shortly after, Ui Kong took Young-ho's weapon and didn't hesitate to kill him because Young-ho had dared to betray him. Ui Gang shows no mercy to Kim's men and kills them all. Not long after, Yuri arrives, and the two of them engage in another fierce one-on-one battle. This time, they have to determine the winner of the deadly fight, and Ui Gang cannot be defeated easily. Neither can Yuri, who is also a professional killer, with weapons or just relying on martial arts skills. Both have almost equal strength and a very strong determination to defeat each other. However, After a fierce and deadly battle, Yui Kong is finally able to defeat Yuri and throw his body into the center of the party, which makes everyone scream in fear and run away in panic. On the other hand, Kim, who still didn't know that all of his men had been killed by Yui Gang, looked happy as he thought he would have fun all night. However, he's surprised to find Yui Kong already in his room holding a gun. Kim calls his men, but Yui Gang says no one will come because he killed them all. Kim then tries to deal with Yui Gang, promising that Kim will make him immune from the law so he can freely carry out his illegal activities. Yui Gang seems intrigued by Kim's offer, but then says that he retired from his dirty work long ago and is now a good citizen by paying taxes on time and running a legitimate business. After that, Yui Gang asks Kim to reveal about Mama Pig, who turns out to be Suwa. Kim says that Suwa sold her adopted daughter, Yoonji, to make a huge profit from the illegal business. After getting the information, Yui Kong gets up and is about to leave. At that moment, Kim thinks she's safe and Yui Kong won't kill her. But then, Yui Gang turned around and shot him while laughing so hard that Kim died. Moments later, Suwa, who was having lunch with Hyun-soo on Jeju Island, was startled by an incoming call from Kim. He briefly said goodbye to Hyun-soo to answer his call. She then gets in her car and answers the phone call. Unexpectedly, it's not Kim who calls Suwa, but Yui Gang, who turns out to be waiting for her in her car. He tells her that Kim is dead and his criminal gang, including Park and Jang. Yui Gang had guessed that Suwa was after him from the start and then put a gun to his head. He's really pissed at her because she dared to implicate his wife. Suwa turns out to be conspiring with Young Ho to frame Yui Gang and blackmail him for harassing Yoonji, a teenage girl. However, in the end, he destroys Suwa's crime syndicate and overthrows Kim's rule. Afterwards, Yui Kong asks Suwa to drive him somewhere and says that from now on, he and his wife will take care of Yoonji until she matures and can live independently. When they finally arrived at the uninhabited location, Yui Gang shot Suwa in the head, killing her. After killing Suwa, Yui Kong then gets out of the car and walks home, while from the opposite direction a van is seen driving towards his car. They are Taehyun and his team who are in charge of cleaning up the murder and removing the body. Later, Yui Kong meets Hyun-soo, enjoys the sunset on the beach, and tells his wife that he kept his promise to look after Yoonji and took her on holiday with them. The film ends with Hyun-soo smiling at Yui Gang and then hugging her husband. It is also revealed that the teenage girl who appeared in Yui Kong's flashback is Hyun-soo.